So you
That's
guys can just
we have
kibitz and
a
let everyone know how great you are.
we are all just fantastic, as everyone in this the attendee list already knows. They certainly know that about me, and they're about to find out how spectacular my mentor and dear friend Cantor Jacob Mendelson is. So welcome everyone. Uh, I'm so excited to introduce you to and for you to get to know my teacher and my mentor and one of the great cantors of both the 20th and the 21st centuries. 2 centuries of Cantor Jacob Ben Sion Mendelson. So, Jack, it's so great to have you here with me and to share this time with some of my congregants here. And let me just introduce quickly that a little background. You may not even know some of this, Jack. The first time I saw you, but didn't meet you, was in Cleveland, Ohio, at the Temple on the Heights.
Concert
Right?
at
It was called the Temple on the Heights in those days. It didn't assume a Hebrew name till much later.
yes.
B'nai Yeshurun, right? To this day, it's
I
known as
remember the
Temple on the Heights.
concert well. It's
Right?
your early mentor,
Right?
Cantor
All Meisels,
Paul
right?
Meisels.
You were
Uh,
25 years old
he
at the time
invited
of
me. It
the
was the
concert,
first major concert that I was invited to,
right?
and all these great luminaries, David Kosovitsky and Moshe Taube in his absolute prime,
Right?
um,
Yeah.
and uh, and the youngins, Mizrahi and
Right?
Alberto, myself, and Tibor Kellen. He was something.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Tibor,
It was,
he
I
came off the
was,
boat. He lived in America for 30 years, and he still had the accent that he had when he came off the boat.
that's true.
In
Yeah.
his shul, his synagogue asked him to teach, and
Yeah.
he was a big opera singer in Hungary.
Right.
They said, "Please teach the bar mitzvah." He says, Tibor no teach.
Right.
Tibor sing."
Boy, that would work well in today's Cantorate,
Oh
wouldn't it,
yeah,
Jack?
he'd be holding a tin cup somewhere.
That's true. That was another time and another place. But so you were 25 then, and let's see, about 15 years later or so, I would be in school at Hebrew Union College, where I would meet you again, really, and our relationship really began then as my teacher and really role model and inspiration to deepen and expand my cantorate and particularly my chazanut, my grasp of the authentic style of traditional chazanut, that art form of leading our liturgy in what was anyway the highest form of Jewish prayer in all of its vocal artistry. And I had the opportunity many times to take the 7 train out to Flushing on a Shabbos morning or a Chag and hear Jack Mendelson daven Shabbat. So for all of my members here, those Shabbat morning services in this very traditional synagogue were usually 3 to 4 hours, right? And filled with glorious, glorious music and davening and song. It was, in its own way, an opera unto itself with one singer, piece of vocal artistry, one after the other for several hours. And I would always find myself just dazzled and thrilled and somewhat exhausted by the end of the experience. It was like walking into another time and place. And that was because of you, Jack Mendelson, and your just incredible and deep chazanic artistry. So, Jack, what I'd like you to share with people is your background, where it all began for you, and that means we're going back to Borough Park, Brooklyn, and you're two early cantorial role models. And I will share just one last thing before you take over, Jack, that some of these people who are attendees today have also been watching my weekly Music Matters show, and they become a little familiar with some of the great chazanim of the past, because I did a number of shows highlighting the life of the Kusavitsky brothers, and of course our teacher, also Moshe Ganshoff, and Quarton and Sirota and Rosenblatt. So they have a sense of who these people are. Having said that, you take over. Tell them about your early years in Borough Park, Brooklyn.
Borough Park was the hotbed of great cantors. They came from Poland mostly, and they ended up in Borough Park. I think the first totally world class, who many people thought was the greatest cantor, who lived at the time, and some people think he's the greatest cantor ever, is Mordechai Hirschman. Mm-hmm. And my synagogue was called Temple Beth El, and that was the shul where they gravitated to. The year 1948, Beth El was a medium-sized congregation. They had 500 seats, and they had this cantor, Mordechai Hirschman, and the crowds, people had to go home. They couldn't get in. There'd be 500 in the shul and another 1,000 in the street, listening to, with the windows open, listening to what Hirschman was doing. He had a gorgeous silvery tone. Could easily have been a crossover artist, could easily have sung opera. He was the first cantor that my parents heard in Brooklyn Borough Park before I was born. And then came Berele Chagi, who was a wonderful chazan, who he had a gorgeous voice. He didn't have the range of a Hirschman, but he had other things. He had in those days, many of the cantors would use falsetto as a trick, if you will, to really change up, like when a pitcher throws fastballs, and then all of a sudden he changes the speed of the pitch and makes the batter swing when the ball isn't even there yet. So when you're singing a cappella, you can't just sing the same way all the time. You have to make changes. You change the vowels, you change the volume, and the attitude. These cantors would assume. They were a throwback to the day when there were no prayer books, before the printing press. No prayer books. So the chazan, the cantor, would sing, and if he said a bracha, a benediction, the congregation would answer Amen. That's what they did. But through the cantor's voice, what the cantor did, they understood the text, because he brought the text to life. They knew when it was sad. They knew when it was happy. They knew when it was angry. And it was the cantor's task to make these people really understand. Well, initially to bring the prayers before the Holy One, and through his or her. Well, then there was no female cantors, through his delivery. And so Borough Park became a place where regular people became insane followers of chazonis. Everybody knew what chazonis means. Chazonis means cantorial music. Chazon, the nicer way of saying it today, chazanut. Chazanut, excuse me, it's chazanis.
Right.
So the the everyone knew it. The bus driver in Borough Park knew it. The cab drivers, the waiter in my father's delicatessen. Sachs and Mendelson's kosher delicatessen, 5413 New Utrecht Avenue, Brooklyn 4, New York.
That's right.
4 zip codes had a lot of numbers. Brooklyn 4, New York. And people came in and they were expecting the waiter to sing so they could, and they would tell them if they thought it was, like the Olympics, they give them a 9 or a 10 or whatever. And great cantors would come, and they knew my parents were insane, particularly my mother. When my mother heard a good cantor, she would start to cry after the first word. It was the sound.
Yeah.
Cantor Gurney mentioned about Yossele Rosenblatt. Rosenblatt, in particular, had a sound that instantly it was prayer, or in Hebrew, tefillah. When he opened his mouth, tefillah came out. There was such pathos in his delivery that my mother would come to shul with several handkerchiefs, and she'd tear up, and she knew the texts, and she was sitting upstairs in the women's gallery in the Orthodox synagogue, and many women would gather around her because they wanted to know when it was appropriate to cry. And there was actually a siddur that told them when to cry. It was called the Taich Siddur. Taich means explanation. And this Taich Siddur, underneath the prayer, there would be a little line. It said, "Here you cry," and you're doing a particular crying type of a prayer.
Jack, we could use that today. We're all doing, services online. We should have little commentary following the text. Cry here.
I know, but let's talk about crying for a second.
Right.
Oh, what are we crying for? That's one of the reasons, sociological reasons,
Right.
why the Cantorate, why we lost, or almost completely lost, the Eastern European cantorial tradition. What do we have to cry about? We all are members of golf clubs and we're doing okay and blah, blah, blah. So look where we are now.
Right.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
There's plenty to cry about.
That's right.
And how better to cry than to be led into that mood by great cantorial music.
Right. And also into great joy, right? And ecstasy, right?
Absolutely.
It's a completely full dimension of human emotion.
The Siddur just doesn't have sad things in it.
Right.
Look at the Hallel,
Right.
It's all songs of praise. And this cantorial music is centuries. It's not a fad.
Right.
Centuries upon centuries old. And we're going to throw that away?
Yeah.
Just because we're living in a modern age? We don't need it anymore. Why do we need it anymore?
Yeah.
So how about, what do we light candles for? We got electricity now. What do we need candles? Why candles?
Right.
Let's get rid of the candles. You want to do that? I don't think so.
Yeah.
So, getting back to my life. So, the 78 speed recordings were playing constantly in my home on the record player, the Victrola, as it was called, and so I couldn't help myself. By the time I was 3-4 years old, I knew all the cantorial pieces. I had a great ear, and I had a nice voice, and I gobbled it up. I gobbled it up at the table. For Shabbos meals, we have special songs called Zemirot, and in Yiddish it's called Zemiris. And we had original Zemiris, our family Zemiris that my grandfather and namesake actually composed. And within those Zemiris is the DNA of cantorial music. The just from singing the Zmiris alone, I became acquainted with the sounds of chazanut, with cantorial music, and so I was steeped in it. It was everywhere. It was in the air. It was everywhere. And my mother, who was a bit mishuga, she she was manic and depressed, and she had a beautiful voice, and she was very upset that she couldn't be a cantor.
Mm,
So she saw to it that her two sons became cantors.
that's right.
First, my brother Saul, may he rest in peace. He was 13 when I was born, and um, and then me. Now, as far as I can't tell about Saul, we never really had the conversation of as if he resented it or not. I didn't, because I loved it from the get-go.
Hmm.
And when I was asked to sing for the relatives, I'd be in a deep sleep Saturday night, and the relatives would come from Newark, New Jersey, and they would play cards for a penny and two, and all of a sudden they're knocking on my door at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Jackie,
Jack,
sing.
come out and sing Vimale. You know what? At first I was a little, but the minute I started singing, you couldn't get me off.
Right.
It's I loved it. She trained me well.
Yes.
Uh, she
I have to ask you, Jack, just for a moment, can you describe what it was like for you to be in the two synagogues, right? Because there was Temple Emmanuel, where David Kusavitsky, right, where's the Chazan,
Yes,
and his brother Mordechai, his brother Moshe was at Bethel, and those were your two family synagogues, right? I mean, what was it
we were
like
members. We
walking
were
to those
members of
schools?
Bethel, the Orthodox,
Right,
really modern Orthodox
right,
congregation, and Emmanuel, which was a conservative shul, and they had a mixed choir. Oh my God,
right.
men and women in the choir. It was a great choir with a
I'll
wonderful
bet.
conductor, Herman Zallis,
Right.
and the it was focused. The focal point was the chazan, um,
Yep.
and and these chazanim, they took you on a ride.
Hmm.
It was an emotional roller coaster. And the choir was basically there to lend support to the chazan. And it wasn't just the choir that lent support, it was the congregation itself,
Hmm.
where the choir would hum, the chazan would sing, and Modi manach nulach. So the choir would go hum, and the congregants would go hum, and they would harmonize hum, 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 in the harmony. And it wasn't when you said before opera,
Yeah.
right away many people's hackles go up. Oh, opera performative, no, it couldn't be like opera. Well, have you ever heard a really great opera singer? Have you ever cried at an opera? Because those who really know it will cry at a performance of great artists who understand the words, and these crazy texts of the opera. These stories are all convoluted stories, but always sad. Usually, always sad. This one kills that one, and by accident he killed his brother, and then the mother-in-law got also killed in this one. You know, and everybody's crying, and they sing these heartfelt arias, and it's Chazonish music is a prayer form, but it's also an art form.
Hmm.
Not everybody can do it. It's a prayer slash art form. And why art? Look at the words of our prayer book, the beautiful text that we have. Shema Kolenu Adonai Eloheinu. Hear our voice, my God. Chus berachem aleinu. Have mercy on us. V'kabel berachamim. And receive with mercy, uveratzon, and willfully, es tefillasenu, our prayer. Our prayer. Don't al tashlichenu liyet zikna. Dear God, don't leave us in our old age. I'm feeling it now. I'm 74. And, I'm thinking of the finish line already. And it's not pleasant. And that prayer, Al Tashlichenu Lietzik, now, you need chazanas to interpret that. What are you going to sing? A Disney song? Al Tashlichenu Lietzik na? Al Tashlichenu Lietzik na? Al Tashlichenu. Come on. Al Tashlichenu Lietzik na. When we run out of gas, kichlos kochenu, our strength is waning. Kichlos kochenu, al tahazvenu, don't leave us. It requires an art in order to bring those words out of the page and into your consciousness.
So to that point, Jack, this is the perfect moment for me to ask you this question and to let's dig in a little bit. So in the contemporary Cantorate, just to your point about, singing, a Disney song, I think in a lot of synagogues across the country now, we're left with singing songs like that are just kind of inserted into the liturgy by cantors and those who may just call themselves cantors but not educated, because it's expedient, because it's what they assume people want to hear. Even a familiar tune, right? You took this familiar tune and, you could do that for anything in the liturgy. Oh, they liked it because they recognized the tune. So the deeper question is, can you just talk a little bit about the challenge that we face? And it's not like, you've only lived your life in Orthodox shuls, all right?
Right.
You're a contemporary chazan, and you love good contemporary music, whether it's Broadway or popular melodies. You're deeply knowledgeable about all those forms. So guide us forward. What can a contemporary cantor, in particular serving in, let's say, Reform temples, how do we deal with that? And for me, the first step is you have to think about that. What is your responsibility as a chazan? Where do you want synagogue music to go? What do you want it to be? And without that first question, there is no answer. So please offer your wisdom for us.
Well, look, I'm an American. I was born in this country. I played ball. I sang Barbara Ann on the beach with my backup bebop quartet. Ba 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 Barbara Ann, oh Barbara Ann. And I loved that music. I loved the original rock with 4 chords. Every song had the same 4 chords.
Right.
And as rock progressed, I was totally blown away, enamored by the Beatles and groups that came after them. And I loved Peter, Paul, and Mary. I loved the American folk. I loved it. It's wonderful. Now, let's talk about what should be in a service. The truth of the matter is, wherever the Jews lived, part of the liturgy reflected the sounds of the place that the people were. When they were in Germany in the 19th century, the music had echoes of Mendelson in it, 2 S's and an H,
Right.
and the great composers of the day, aside from the regular nusach being the way, the using the synagogue modes that are prescribed for certain prayers. Yes, they use nusach, but then they would give it a hint of the local custom of music. In the Italian Renaissance, there was a composer, Salomone Rossi, who wrote in the court of the Duke of Mantua, and the music sounded like Italian Renaissance music. We understand that. Why shouldn't America have its turn also? And guess what? I agree. I agree. But it should be good. It should be thought out. It should be written for the liturgy, not taken from Les Mis and brought into the liturgy. Written for the liturgy by wonderful composers. You have wonderful composers. You have a Gerald Cohen. You have a Jonathan Commissar, and too many to name. Wonderful composers out there who write for the liturgy, and I believe in singing that music. There was a time in the early days when that music just started to bring its way into the synagogue music culture, when I thought, yes, let's have it, but it should be the guest, and Chazonis should be the host. Mm-hmm. Now, I understand it. The Chazonis isn't even a guest anymore, mm-hmm. in most cases. Chazonis is not there, totally not there. Mm-hmm. So what my quest is, and believe me, it's a quest. It's aside from my family, it is the love of my life, and it's the challenge of my life, and it is my daily existence. It is my duty on my watch to see to it that Chazanut survives and comes to the next generation. Why? Because I know it's good, and I know it's great. The proof of the pudding is all during my Cantorate, many young students from the various congregations that I was in have become Cantors. I have mentored many a young kid to either be in the Cantorate I would have children's choirs, and I venture to say that every one of those kids during all the years, every one of them that got a real taste by singing for a cantor and with a cantor, using those ancient modes, every one of them goes to synagogue to this day, hearing it, wanting to hear it, wanting to participate, becoming synagogue board members, because they had that experience. I always bring up, I'm retired now, I don't have a pulpit, but I always brought up a kid for a duet every Shabbos, sometimes 2 and 3. Of course, it was a kid that could do it, that really, and it was, what could be bad? You see a beautiful 10-year-old kid singing with the cantor, a gorgeous duet. Come on, what are you going to go home? You're going to eat it up alive. And those kids, the first time they heard it, they weren't spoiled. Nobody told them that cantorial music was performative, because they didn't know what it was. The minute they heard it, they went, "Oh my God, that's cool. That is so cool." When you teach chazanas to a kid, even teach Jewish, songs, Yiddish songs, they're open, And so what I'm trying to do is, yes, let's bring them in with what they know. Fine. But then it's our obligation to teach them about the foundation of all synagogue music. Are we going to let that go, this art form? Are we going to let it go? Should we never buy a Chagall? I mean, what do we let die? Tell me. The art of cantorial music, what it does is it beautifies the words, which is called hidur mitzvah, the beautification of a mitzvah, a commandment. You don't just do a mitzvah. For instance, the mitzvah of saying Kiddush Friday night. You don't just make Kiddush in a in a coffee cup. You make it in a beautiful becher, as we call it, silver with beautiful filigree, and you beautify the mitzvah. You don't just cover the challah with a napkin. You cover the challah with a beautiful challah decal, challah cover. Even the knife that you cut the challah with, many of them have beautiful Hebrew words on the side of the knife. So hidur mitzvah, chazanut is all about hidur tefillah, or to make, to beautify the prayer. So what I'm after, what I want, and what I insist upon is that chazanut must have a seat at the table.
Mm-hmm.
It can't be like it was in the 40s,
Right.
where you came to shul at 8 o'clock and you went home at 2:30, and no one was in a rush. They couldn't leave the chazan. They were so enamored, and the choir and the kids in the choir. The old choirs were tenors, adults, basses, adults, sopranos, adults singing falsetto,
Right.
and children singing alto, SATB.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, the choirs weren't they weren't elegant in their singing. It was a homegrown type of a thing, but boy, could they hum
Mm-hmm.
to give an underpinning for the chazan. It was like an organ.
Mm-hmm.
It was like an organ accompanying the chazan. And somebody recently brought me a cassette tape of a prayer service that I did in 1969 in my conservative synagogue, and I couldn't believe it. Not how I sang, but the fact that the congregation, there was no choir. The congregation would take the musical cue from me and go and hum magnificently in 3-part harmony, and then I would change keys. They'd go into the new key and hum. And even more importantly, when you're doing a traditional prayer service, there are moments where the congregation says the text in an undertone before the cantor. That's the most beautiful moment of all. More beautiful than the cantor even. We had a shul when they rebuilt Bethel for Mordechai Hirschman, 1,800 seats.
Right. For those watching, that's the size of Wilshire Boulevard Temple.
Right?
Yeah.
1,800 seats, and you couldn't get in. There were 200 standing every shop. And these cantors, they were artistes. They walked around. They had a cape, a walking stick, and they followed by an entourage.
Right.
And they only would pray. They would only lead prayers once a month.
Right.
Once a month during the blessing of the new month. That was all they could do. Was the rest of the 3 weeks they went out touring and doing guest appearances or davenings,
Right.
prayer leading at other synagogues all over the world. And I completely forgot about exactly what I was saying, but
We're talking about the congregation and these lay choirs.
these lay people were singing, and they would take the cue to daven, and the daven, it kind of sounds like this, the davening. Imagine one person going, they're saying the words in an undertone. When I have a bar mitzvah kid, I would kid with them and say, I would go, they daven, 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 they daven. And then another person next to that person might have a different voice. They daven, they daven, they daven, they daven. The next person go, they daven, they daven, they daven. Now times 1,800.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? The hairs on the back of my neck would go up when I would hear it. Well, not so much then, because that's how it was. I thought that everybody does that, But now when I hear it, in retrospect, it's the most joyous joyous thing. For that to happen, we'd have to have our Marshall Plan for everybody to learn Hebrew and
Right.
and to get that. But we could teach them right from the bima. This is how you bring chazanut to the congregation.
I'm paying very careful attention right now, Jim.
Right from the bima, before the cantor sings the piece that he or she is singing. Cantor will get up in front of the congregation. I'm about to sing, or in concert with the rabbi could also say, our cantor is about to sing. That means there has to be a meeting between the cantor and the rabbi during the week, where the cantor explains the piece that they're going to do, and explains why in the piece there's a modulation here, why is there a high note there, why is there a low note there, why is there an extension where you hold the note a long time. There's always a reason. The text dictates the reason. And then the rabbi or the cantor themselves will get up and explain what's happening, and then do the piece. And you see the people sitting on the edge of their seats like a dog on point. There's the duck, let's go get the duck. It's like they're involved. You don't have to sing along to be involved. To be involved, you have to be involved. You have to know about if you know what's going on, then you're included. Then you're free. You can hum. And humming is an easy thing to teach a congregation. Just 5 minutes a week for about 2 months, and they'll have it. And then all you do is do that, ask them to hum at an appropriate time. Cut them off. And all of a sudden, they're a choir. They're participating fully with the chazan. Singing full compositions along, fine. That's fine. That's great. But there has to be an understanding. We're not trying to fight with anybody. We're trying to do a hidur mitzvah. We're trying to beautify the mitzvah. That's all we're trying to do. We're not trying to show off. We're not. It's maybe there's some people that want to show off. Okay, then they're not my friends. But you're beautifying the mitzvah. I love. I was always in love with Debbie Friedman's music, and we became pals. We became friends. We loved each other in the Journey of the Spirit, the movie of her life. I was in the movie, and I was at her apartment, and she always wanted to learn chazanut. So I would teach her. She would, Fregish. Fregish is the name of a mode. Fregish, which is Yiddish slang for Phrygian. Phrygian is the name of the mode. They're talking about a major scale, but instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you do 1, 2, 3. So the second one, 1, 2, instead of 1, 2, 1, 2, and then 3. It goes higher, even a little bit than the normal 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, like Karl Bach's Mizmor LeDavid. Have you ever heard that? Havul Adonai b'nei Elim. That's Fregish. So she said, Jackie, teach me Fregish. Teach me Fregish. So I would teach her Fregish, and then I brought my guitar, and then she would teach me guitar. And then there was one session where I wrote a song. I said, I'm excited, Debbie, this is what I wrote. I wrote a Micha Mocha. And many Reformed cantors use it. Micha Mocha boelim Adonai, Micha Mocha neder b'gnarati Osef, Osef ele. She said, how about a second part for that song? And she went die 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 die. This is Debbie. Die 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 die. Back to Micha Mocha Moilivat. So whenever I see that Micha Mocha, I do the Debbie.
Oh, you have to send that to me because I've been doing Your Michamocha on Shabbat morning for a number of years now with choir, with
right? Wow,
choir on Shabbat morning. Simon Spiro's arrangement, right?
Yeah. Oh my God.
And it's beautiful, beautiful. But now you have to send me Debbie's second.
Yeah, Debbie made it better.
Yeah.
And she's what a tunesmith she is.
Yeah, she was a genius.
Oh my goodness, that last Shalom Aleichem that she wrote before we lost her.
So Jack, I think we just came up with what you shared with us, me in particular, when we get back to being in person. May it be God's will sooner than later. I'm gonna start implementing what you just described about teaching the congregation to hum, and in addition to that, expanding upon. I'll add that Debbie Friedman piece in there, right? And that in and of itself, isn't that the example you're setting for us? Here's a traditional tune in Fragish, as it should be, Micha Mocha on Shabbat morning. And we're going to blend that with a contemporary Debbie Friedman tune that works together in this beautiful relationship.
Funny you should say that.
Ha ha.
For 2 years now, Ilana Arian, who is a genius, and she is one of the great composers of the moment in the Reform movement. Ilana and I team teach a course at HUC, which is called Improvisation Integration. And my job is to take a contemporary tune by whoever, let's say Finkelstein. I'm blanking on his first name. Mayer Finkelstein.
And my folks are very familiar with a lot of his melodies. That's for sure.
To blend a Finkelstein melody, which is kind of movie music, American sounding,
right,
with chazanut. So and I taught this to my class, and I do it with Debbie Friedman, and each of them at the end of the year have to do a performance of, let's say, a full Kabbalah Shabbat with integration, chazanut in the middle and back to the contemporary, chazanut back to the contemporary. And Don, you're the poster boy for this, because in order to do that, you have to be musical. So when you do the fusion, when the new one comes in, it can't be shocking. You have to do a proper modulation, which you could do 100 times better than me with your incredible musicianship. So so ledor vador, ledor vador. You know it. Ledor vador, nagid God lecho. Ulenetzach nitzachim, ulenetzach nitzachim, kedushat chanaged. V'shivachach, v'shivachach, mi pino la yamu, pino la yamu, pino la yamu, modulation. Leolam voed, Kielem, Kiel. I said, I lost myself. I don't have the instrument playing with me. It goes right into Kiel Melech Gadol.
Yes.
Kiel Melech Gadol.
You got it. Kiamericado,
Nado, Kadoshata. Oh,
Right.
it's high.
Yes.
Meleka, Kia Melekado. So this is not the key to sing it in, but that's the key I started with. Kado, the Kadoshata, Ledorvada.
Yeah.
So, and the rabbi and the cantor can be friends. So traditional and modern can be friends.
Yeah.
So sorry I screwed up on the modulation, but I promise you
I
it's
don't
a
think anyone
perfect
might.
modulation.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And and we have 5, 6, 7. I did a Debbie Friedman Modim,
Mm-hmm.
uh, which she approved of,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so on and so forth.
We should send this hour, Jack, to every cantor in America, right? Because this is enlightening for me too. Because I've been wrestling with this for a long time, and of course I sing lots of contemporary music, and whether it's Mayer or Debbie Friedman, anybody else, and it's been a challenge to figure out. To find a balance in that, even to weave them into the same piece of music. It's one thing to do Finkelstein, Kadusha and Lador Vador, and then do, a traditional thing. But to weave them into the same piece
Yes, yeah.
requires what you said, a
Yeah.
real kind
In the
of.
Modim, I start with Debbie. I do some Chazanut.
Mhm.
I go back to Debbie, and I finish the final bracha in Chazanut. And she cried. She kissed me
Yeah. Hmm.
because she doesn't. She's not interested in killing off Chazanut.
Right.
She,
Right.
she wanted to bring people in that don't have anything,
Yes.
and so does
Oh,
yeah,
Fred Mendelson,
Dando.
a
Ladies
phenomenal
and
singer
gentlemen,
and Hazan
who are listening to this, you have no idea how much we love this man.
Yeah.
We love you, Don,
The
and
feeling's
we miss you
mutual.
terribly.
Yes,
The feeling's mutual.
Oh, this Don, he brought my son Danny his first baseball glove.
Yes, I did.
Do you know what an athlete this guy is? Tremendous.
Oh, they have no idea
Gurney,
because, they shouldn't know how many mornings I play tennis. It's not good
right?
for the shul to know how much tennis the cousin's playing.
Yeah.
But Jack, this has been just an amazing, amazing treat for me, as I know but for those who are watching and just experiencing you. You are the vessel, right? To share all of this in such a way that I don't think there's anyone else really on planet Earth who could, convey it and express it in a way that is number one, both so deep and also so entertaining and engaging, right? But also really making the point and how important it is for the survival of one of the great cultural achievements in Jewish history.
A
And that is the truth.
uniquely Jewish art form. Are we going
Yeah,
to let that? A uniquely
right,
Jewish art. It's a classical musical art form,
right.
which is the the non-Jewish people who are in the world of classical singing. The respect that they have for cantors
Hmm.
is tremendous.
Yeah.
Tremendous respect they have, and because it's emotional. See, you not only have permission to be emotional in Chazanut, you must be emotional.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
must emote. It's the hardest thing to teach a student. If a student is shy and is afraid to let it out, and but you have to gently bring them to that.
I think our contemporary, Jews who belong to, our synagogues would respond with great pleasure and a heightened sense of spirituality, uh, and be moved by it. They would look forward to coming to services because they'll be moved. They won't just only be singing, some popular tunes together. Look, singing together as a group of human beings is already a powerful experience, whatever it is you're singing. But how much more deeper that experience could be if we offer what is authentically Jewish,
If you
right?
go on YouTube, and if my student and dear friend Dan Mutlu,
Hmm.
who's a wonderful, wonderful young chazan, and really, really very proficient in Eastern European chazanut.
Hmm.
And it's been so many years that they've even heard a lick of that music. I
Right.
can't even tell you.
Yeah.
At his installation, you could find it on YouTube. He did exactly that.
Yeah.
He spoke about a part of the service. It was the psalm. It was the Mizmor David, Psalm 29,
Hmm.
and he had his guitar. He put the guitar down for a moment. He said, "I'd like to do something very different," and he took the time to explain this
Hmm.
in very succinct, fast way.
Hmm.
This is Eastern European Chazanut, and this is what brought me in the first place to
Hmm.
Jewish music. And I want you to hear it. And he explained what he was going to do, and then he sang a tremendous little piece by one of the all-time greats. I think it was David Reutemann,
Hmm.
and uh, and uh, and he fused it into a Debbie Friedman tune. When
Yeah.
at the end of it, the piano started playing it. By the way, he had a male choir
Yeah.
humming for him in the piece
Right.
and responding to him. And
Yeah.
at the end of the piece, he slowly put on his guitar and he went right into the next piece with his guitar.
It's
And it's
beautiful.
the
Beautiful.
perfect fusion of two cultures.
Right. I will tell you, I've been in contact with Dan, and I just heard from him this morning. We're going to do a virtual Friday night service together, either in towards the middle of May or early June. And now I have another proposal, another thing I know I'm going to do. You and I, Jack, are going to create a Friday night service together, and we'll record it and present it, virtually, like we're doing everything else now for probably another year or so, uh, where you and I put our talents together, and you guide me, and we're going to create a Friday night experience for Wilshire Boulevard Temple and the Jewish community beyond, where we do exactly what you've been describing.
That's
Right?
that nothing
And
nothing.
for that, we can have choir as well because everything's pre-recorded,
Yep. But we
right?
can't have kiddush.
No kiddish. Yeah, that right. So we'll follow up and talk about a date. That would just be spectacular.
I'll send you some New York deli in a care package.
Oh, the one thing I forgot to mention about Borough Park.
Yeah.
Probably the greatest creation that came out of there, including all the chazanut, was the blackout layer cake from Ebinger's.
Oh my goodness. Not to mention the Charlotte Russe.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness! I once
Imagine,
stopped
if
there.
you will,
Yes,
a
right.
cup, a round cup with sort of like a tube, and underneath you have like a white cake underneath, and on top you have a mound of what's the white stuff.
Right.
What
Whipped cream.
whipped cream. Thank you very much. I'm 74. Some words escape me. With a cherry maraschino cherry on top.
That's right.
I mean, this is heaven. It's just heaven.
Can I tell you, Jack, the first time I had Ebinger's blackout layer cake, I went to, it was David Kusavitsky's funeral at Temple Emmanuel. And I got a ride there with Elliot Dicker, Cantor Elliot Dicker. And when we left the funeral, he said, listen, I got to make one stop. It's mandatory. And we went to Ebinger's, which still existed then, and he bought two blackout layer cakes. Right? That's my memory of David
Yeah,
Kusavitsky's funeral. So,
I miss Hershey's Knish shop. I miss that a lot.
Oh my goodness, Jack, I love you so much, and thank you for being here with me today and to share. Oh my goodness, your wisdom and your history and your love and your passion for our beautiful, extraordinary, and just glorious cultural history of Chazanut and synagogue music. And we're going to do what we just talked about. We're going to make this come alive. And on behalf of all of those listening and beyond, we're so grateful to you. And we're going to do it again. We're going to actually do something about this.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you all. Enjoy.
Okay.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank
I love you,
John.
Hannah Gold.
You're welcome.
I love you, Hannah Gold.
I love you, Jackie Mendelson.
How's that boy? Is he getting into
He's
trouble?
so good. He's so good. He can't wait to see you again.
Okay. All right.
To hear that beautiful voice of yours.
All right.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Say hi to Freda for me.
I will.